Welcome back into another edition of Prime Sports World. And on today's episode of the Prime, we are going to give you our full UFL 2025 season preview presented by Prime Sports World. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast if you like what we're doing here at Prime Sports World. I'm, of course, your host, David On Point Huffman. TJ will be joining me on future episodes of the podcast, but he was a little bit tired tonight, so he couldn't join. But we're going to talk about the XFL, UFL. We're going to be breaking down their entire season. We're also going to give you our week one predictions, as that starts on Friday. By the way, UFL, just a little, take a note from the National Football League. You should have your champion playing on your opening weekend, but that's just me. The opening night should be your champion going up against potentially the team they beat in the championship. The Brahmas. Sorry, they beat the San Antonio Brahmas last season. As the Brahmas were the runner-up. Just a small critique there. We're going to talk about every single team and then give you our week one predictions. If you want to follow all of the stuff going on with the UFL as we try to be the number one hub for all things UFL this season, as we have been the last 3 seasons. But please like, share, subscribe to the podcast. If you missed the show yesterday, we gave you our full mock draft 1.0. So go check out that content for very much. I'll be back. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the team that won this championship. So Birmingham Stallions, they have a 20-24 record, 9-1 in 2024. They have the reigning champions. As I just mentioned, they knocked off the Brahmas. Skip Holtz is the head coach of this football team. Matt Corral will be the quarterback of this football team as they look to replace Adrian Martinez, who was the UFL MVP last season and was kind of the catalyst for their strong play for majority of the year. But he signed with the New York Jets. So Matt Corral and Alex Magoo will be the quarterbacks fighting for that starting position. Notable position players, wide receiver Deion Kane, tight end Chase Sternberger, who was really solid for this team down the stretch. Carlos Davis, the defensive tackle, and then the safety AJ Thomas. This was the best team from wire to wire in the UFL last season. I can't even remember when the game that they actually lost. I think it was like towards the very end of the season, but it wasn't really all that important. They got Ricky Pearson Jr. as their running back. CJ McGarable is also there as the other running back on this roster. Kenny Robinson Jr. to the top defensive back, and then they have a good punter on this football team. This is the back-to-back. USF. So they won 2 USFL League champions before the merger with the XFL, and then they were the UFL championship. So they got 3 titles in a row. They have plenty of returning players that's going to help this football team, and they have continuity with the coaching. They're 26. Skip Holtz in the 4th season as the head coach of this football team. It's 26-4 in his career as the head coach of the Birmingham Stallions. They have. Alex Magoo is somebody to watch as they're going to be fighting him and Matt Corral. Matt Corral was really good in college at Ole Miss. Going to be I would be betting that he's going to be the starting quarterback of this football team, but we'll see. This is also a football team that has never lost in the postseason. They're 6-0, and they dominated the Brahmas in that title game, 25-0. I think we'll see what happens here. Alex Magoo actually did have a stint with Birmingham a few years ago. They're going to be the odds-on favorite to win the title this season. I guess we'll talk about them as the season kind of kicks into gear here. But I very much expect the Birmingham Stallions to be the cream of the crop when it comes to the UFL this upcoming season. The other team that made the playoffs kind of on the leg of Jake Bates, who no longer is on this football team. He is now in the National Football League. They were 7-3 last season. Mike Nolan is the head coach of this football team. Danny Etling is the quarterback, and then Marcus Sims and Kai Nakua. And yes, if that name looks familiar to you, it should, because he is he's the brother of Puka Nakua, the standout wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. Bryce Perkins is another quarterback that's also on this football team. Matthew Colburn, good running back. Marcus Sims, Noah Johnson, offensive lineman. Breland Speaks, if I remember, I don't remember who was the DPOY last season, but it may have been Breland Speaks. Let me look that up real quick. I feel like Breland Speaks may have been DPOY last season. I think that's going to be hard to look up, actually. Yeah, DPO. Yeah, Breland Speaks was the DPOY last season, so I expected him to continue to have his strong play at the linebacker position for this football team. Mike Nolan, third coach. If you go by their records, they've gotten better every single season. So USFL was there for 3 seasons, 2-8 in their first season, 4-6 in the season after that, and 7-3. This was a coming season. They've just continued to get better. They did get beat by the Stallions in that playoff game, 31-18, but they did have a lead very early in that game, 18-3. But then just some boneheaded plays down the stretch of that game where it just kind of all unraveled for the Michigan Panthers as that game kind of just went down to the line there as they're 7-3. Breland Speaks, he was the sack leader last season. He was DPOY. He's a good football player. I don't know if they're I hate to say like losing Jake Bates is going to have this kind of big time impact, but he won them some serious games, and he was a difference maker for the Michigan Panthers. They will have to try to change him. One of the things that it's going to have to be better for the Michigan Panthers this upcoming season is at the quarterback position. They played a league high 4 different guys throughout the season. The only guys that return for the team of Bryce Perkins and Danny Etling. You expect those guys to be better a year deeper into the system. So hopefully that ends up coming to fruition for the Michigan Panthers because this was a fun football team to watch. Just by numbers, though, they weren't exactly they were the second best offense in the NFL in terms of yards per game. They had 19 touchdowns. This was a pretty prolific offense when it comes to the Michigan Panthers last season. Yeah, I don't have that number, points per game. But yeah, when it comes to this, so they did score a lot of touchdowns. I'm not really sure how they got all these touchdowns. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, this is a team that had a pretty solid offense. Look. Oh yeah, I'm looking at the wrong numbers. Anyways, am I? No, I'm not. Michigan Panthers. Yeah, 1,200 yards. Second most, only trailing the Michigan Panthers by about 100 last season. Hold on just a second. That's the hard part about doing these shows solo. So I gotta take a real quick test minutes. From the Michigan Panthers, let's talk about the Memphis Showboats as the bottom of the USFL was just not a good performance in this conference. The 2-8 Memphis Showboats. Jim Turner is the head coach of this football team. I think he's the interim head coach because I think their original head coach left. It's his first season. They were 5-5 in their first season in the UFL, USFL, and then they regressed a little bit in 2-8. They've never made the postseason in any of the seasons as a member of this league. They have Troy Williams as their returning quarterback. I also have Jason Bean, who's the quarterback there, and David Davis, Jacoby Shates, and Jalen Allen is another football player on this football team. Jonathan Adams, J.J. Wilson is another white. Alec Lindstrom, offensive lineman, who had a brief stint in the National Football League. Kyra Woods, Nahami Shelton, Matthew Coughlin, EJ Perry, who had a stint EJ Perry? He was in the NFL. Cameron Dantzler, who was a very good corner for the Minnesota Vikings for a little while, had a lot of upside, just never really panned out in the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see. So John D. Flippo was the head coach of this football team. They were not good. Their only wins were against the even worse Houston Roughnecks last season. So they had both of those games against the Houston Roughnecks, and they won the games on the last game and I think the first game of the year. To have a 9-game losing streak is tough. So the general manager, Jim Mose, and Ken Wisenhunt somehow involved in this franchise now. EJ Perry played a stint in the NFL. I just can't remember where he played. So, yeah, E.J. Perry was drafted by the Jaguars. Houston Texans, spent some time there. He spent some time on the Jacksonville Jaguars practice squad. He was on the Michigan Panthers practice squad as well, and now he's projected to be the starter there in Memphis. Just looking at some overall numbers, this was the absolute worst offense in the UFL last season. They only put up 650 yards per game. That means they had 65 yards of offense per game, per contest. That means not 6 touchdowns in 2024 for the Memphis Showboats. It's just not going to be good enough to cut it to win games in any league, but especially the UFL where you're playing against pros, men who do this for a living. So, I mean, I think it's still an uphill battle. I think you still have a lot of question marks at quarterback with Troy Williams and E.J. Perry kind of still just being sort of unproven in any league, not alone the UFL. But, you got to give Jim Turner a chance. It's going to be the first. There's probably going to be some growing pains. It's interesting that Ken Wisenhunt now is involved in this offense. In this team, he comes from that NFL pedigree. He was the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals when they went to the Super Bowl and lost. So you kind of think that maybe he can be a guy that instills a little bit of those good just mechanics and protocols for how to run a proper franchise, because it hasn't been a thing for the Showboats so far as they've been in the UFL. From the Memphis Showboats, we got the Houston Roughnecks, the only team worse than the Memphis Showboats last season. They were 1-9. Curtis Johnson is the interim head, or he's the comes back as the head coach of this football team. Nolan Henderson is going to be the quarterback on the roster. Running back Kirk Merritt and middle linebacker Christopher Allen are some notable players that return on this roster. Also, so Curtis Johnson, he's 6-4 over record, his third season as the head coach of this football team. In 2022, he was 3-7. This is when they were the Gamblers before the merger, and they became the Roughnecks in 2025 or 2024. They were 5-5 and kind of on the upswing there in 2023, and then they obviously regressed, falling to 1-9 in 2024. Anthony Brown, who had a stint in the NFL, is going to be on this football team as well. Offensive lineman Zach Banner, who had a stint, Cameron Sutton, who was a spell in the NFL, also going to be on this. Damon Arnett, who was a first-round pick out of Ohio State by the Las Vegas Raiders a few years ago. He just hasn't really worked out, and he didn't work out at all in the NFL. And so it'll be interesting to see what he looks like in the UFL. Going back all the way to 2022 when they were the Gamblers, this Houston team has yet to make the playoffs. Curtis Johnson continues to be the head coach of this football team. I think Anthony Brown will probably be the starter of this football team because he just comes with all that NFL experience. I feel like Anthony Brown is the kid that went to Oregon and then was the backup to Lamar Jackson so Anthony Brown, he's actually so he was the backup to Lamar Jackson in the NFL in the preseason. I don't know if he ever made the actual roster, but he was good in Oregon. He's 26 years old now. His birthday's coming up in July. He played on the Ravens. He was on that team in 2022. He is now probably going to be the starting quarterback of this football team when it's all said and done. But they're just going to have to figure out how to win games. I mean, looking at some of the numbers for the Roughnecks, they were also putrid on offense. 744 yards in 10 games. That's 74 yards per game in total offense. You're just not going to win football games if your offense is that inept. It's just not going to work out. Oh, this is all just rushing numbers. Man, that's terrible. Hold on. Let me take a look at some better numbers here. Where's overall? Yeah, here we go. Either way, they were still pretty inept. So they had total yards. They had 2,500 total yards. Back to the Memphis Showboats. Yeah, they had 2,300 total yards, which is good for only 230 per game. 255 for the Roughnecks. That's just straight up not going to get it done. When it comes to scoring, they averaged basically 15 points per game. They had 17 touchdowns and 15 field goals. For 158. They were outscored by the Memphis Showboats, a team that they had more yards of offense than, and somehow they didn't score as many points as the Memphis Showboats did, which is probably why they only won one game last season. Just also bringing with the numbers, the Stallions averaged 26.5 yards per game, with the Panthers averaging 22.8 yards per game, and Panthers 300 yards of total offense per game, 347 for the Stallions in 2024, as they tried to just bounce back for what was a horrendous season for the Houston Roughnecks. Swinging on to the other side, the XFL conference, we got 4 returning teams. The San Antonio Brahmas, they were the runners-up in the title game, getting beat down by the Stallions 25-3 or 25-0. They were 7-3 in 2024. They are coached by Wade Phillips. Kellen Mond is going to be the quarterback of this football team, and Jontre Kirkland, who was the leading receiver in all of the UFL last season, and Javante Beckett is a linebacker who's returning to this football team, one of the notable players on this team as we move forward. As they try to build on what was a pretty productive season for them in the last 2 years. So they kind of flip-flop records. They were 3-7 in 2023 in the first season of the XFL. And then in 2024, they were 7-3. They were the runners-up in 2024 in the UFL. Anthony McFarland, the running back, also returns to this team. Marquise Stevenson, Devontae Beckett, Jordan Williams, Jordan Mosley, who had a stint in the NFL, Darius Phillips, who also had a stint in the NFL, Brad Wing, who played a long time in the NFL, Gregor Greedy Williams, who had a stint, played for the Cleveland Browns there for a little bit. I'm not sure who the quarterback was at last season for this football team, so excuse me if I don't remember. But Kellen Mond now will be taking snaps under center. He had a lot of promise at A&M, and I thought he was going to be something in the National Football League. It just never really got the opportunity or the platform to really take the team anywhere. Greedy Williams, former second round pick of the Cleveland Browns a while ago. Jordan Phillips was a playmaking safety. Jordan Mosley. This football team, if it can get the quarterback situation under wraps, this should be a team that has a really tough-nosed defense. That's what they're kind of known for. At least 2 years ago I think they played they either played or won the title game 2 years ago. San Antonio Brahmas, 19.3 yards per game. They were fifth best. They were the fourth best offense in terms of yards per game, 296.6. I wonder if I can find defensive numbers here real quick. Yeah, defense. So, hold on. So I don't have the numbers here right all in front of me. Okay, so the San Antonio Brahmas were the best defense in the UFL last season, allowing only 15.3 yards per game, and they were the stingiest defense in terms of yards per game at 256.7. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they had a fantastic defense. I mean, they were able to generate pressure onto the quarterback, and that's going to bode well for them moving forward in the UFL as they try to defend their XFL title and see if maybe they can take another step forward and actually win the USFL championship or the UFL championship. From there, we got the St. Louis Battlehawks, and we got a lot of change to talk about when it comes to the St. Louis Battlehawks. Oh, reliable AJ McCarron is not walking through that door. They are now going to be without who was their best football player last season. Anthony Beck returns. He's his third season as the head coach in spring football. In 2022, they were 3-2. In 2023, they were 7-3, the first season of the XFL. And then in 2024, 7-3. And in 2024, they were XFL conference runner up. And I think, because I'm pretty sure so they got beat in the divisional or whatever, the quote unquote, the first round of the playoffs in the first season of the XFL by the Renegades. I want to say it was the Renegades. And then the Renegades went on to win the championship that season, surprisingly. Because they just basically snuck into the playoffs and then they won the championship behind Luis Perez at the quarterback position. Returning players: Manning Wilkins, Jacob Saylor, who's a fantastic running back, Keith Butler, who tried out for the National Football League, he just didn't really pan out. He's probably more suited for spring football. Kurt Pearson also was fantastic for this team last season. Mike Rose, Willie Harvey, Travis Feeney, Cameron Kelly. Some of the notable Denzel Mims is now playing in the UFL after a brief stint in the National Football League. Rodrigo Blankenship, was a very highly drafted player for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I want to say. Or I know he played a hot minute for the Indianapolis Colts. But the big one is Max Duggan. So Max Duggan is going to have to be the guy who replaces AJ McCarron, who was probably the biggest star in the UFL last season. He's kind of became the face of the franchise of the league a little bit there, where he talked about having his kids wanting him to watch him play. But this is a team. I mean, Max Duggan took TCU. I know they got beat down in that title game against Georgia 2 years ago now. I think it was 2 years ago. But now, he's going – this is going to be an offense that has some weapons. I mean, Hakeem Butler, Jacoby Pearson, Denzel Mims, both fantastic. All three of them fantastic wide receivers. And then Jacob Sailors returns to the backfield as the running back. I mean, this should be an offense that can put up points in bunches. And they've been really the St. Louis Battlehawks have been the most successful spring football team that hasn't won a championship. I mean, they've been as good as advertised, and this fan base has shown up for this football team. They lost to the Brahmas in 2024 with a 10-point loss at home. One of those games where the building was wild there. It all really depends on how they're able to replace AJ McCarron at the quarterback position. He was kind of the stabilizing force. If Max Duggan is good and he plays well for this football team, there's no reason that this team shouldn't be a 7-8 win football team for sure. Just going over the defensive side of the ball, they were middle of the pack, or they were the third best defense when it comes to total yards per game, 259 yards allowed per game, and they only allowed 20.2 yards per game on the defensive side of the ball. On the other side, for the offense, they were the number 6 offense, surprisingly, with 272 yards of total offense. And then they were second in points per game at 26 points per game. So they weren't necessarily putting up gaudy numbers. Also, AJ McCarron missed some time last season, so those numbers are a little bit skewed from what they would normally be with AJ McCarron under center. But this is a St. Louis Battlehawks team that should be ready to go and should be one of the better teams in the XFL and in the entire league. And I fully expect them to compete for a title this year. From there, we got the DC Defenders, a team that was kind of the darling of the XFL in their first full season. But they definitely, something was up with Jordan Tiamo last season. He just didn't play well in their first season in the UFL. They were the 2023 XFL League runner-up as they got beat by the Arlington Renegades in that championship game. In the 3 seasons that they have been there, they were 3-2 in their first season, and then they were 9-1 in 2023, followed by 2024. They were 4-6. Jordan Tiamo is still the starting quarterback. Abraham Smith, who I think tore his Achilles like the first in training camp, and they were just really never able to recover from his loss, how valuable he was on this football team. They got 2 good wide receivers, Ty Scott and Chris Rowland. Malik Fisher is a good defensive end. Davin Bellamy was in the National Football League for a minute. DeAndre Baker was a for sure National Football League player. Matthew McCrane, Jaden Mickens, who had a brief spent in the National Football League. But yeah, they struggled in the first season in the UFL after being the best team in the XFL. The first season that team was fully loaded, but they got injured real early. Jordan Tiamo just never looked like the same guy. Reggie Barlow left this football team to go take the Tennessee State job. So congratulations to him. Shannon Harris, who I admittedly don't know a lot about, but he gets to work with, Jordan Tiamo. They'll have Smith back for the season as he ruptured his Achilles early in training camp and should be ready to go for the start of the season. He was the number 1 rusher in 2023. Got some solid pass catchers. They did lose some pieces on defense, but they're going to need to have Jordan Tiamo play better than he did last season. So this team either could go 7-3 or 3-7. It really depends on how Jordan Tiamo bounces back after what was a pretty abysmal first season in the UFL. After I'm pretty sure he was the league MVP the season before that, where he was just fantastic. And then, well, I don't know what happened last season for Jordan Tiamo. He just wasn't the same guy. So I look for him to bounce back in a big way. Just looking at some numbers here. Just staying on the offensive side of the ball real quick, and then I'll swing over to the defense. The defenders were the 5th best offense in terms of yards per game, with 272.4 yards per game. On the scoring, yeah, they were 5th best scoring team as well with 20.9. Where the slippage, I think, really occurred was when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. Sorry. Because they were the 6th worst defense, or the 6th worst defense in the league. So there are only 2 defenses worse than them: the Arlington Renegades and the Memphis Showboats, who combined for 3 wins that last season, with 301. And then when it comes to giving up points, they gave up points in bunches: 25.1 yards points per game given up by DC. That's the 7th worst in the league. The only team that was worse, the Memphis Showboats, who again won 2 games last year. So it's really going to depend on what kind of version of Jordan Tiamo we get in 2025. And then to the Arlington Renegades, the team that won the XFL title in 2023, just never could capture that same magic in 2024. They had a 3-7 season. Bob Stoops is the head coach of this football team. Luis Perez, who is just a spring football legend, who I think he has like 3 titles as a quarterback in spring football with a championship. You got Sal Cannella, who's a fantastic tight end, Tyler Vaughns, who's a fantastic wide receiver who should bolster that unit for the Arlington Renegades, a team that won the championship in 2023. Bob Stoops, his 4th season as the head coach of a summer league football team. They were 2-3 in 2020. They were 4-6 in 2023. But because of the league rules, they technically were the 2nd best team in their division. So they went to the playoffs with a 4-6 record, and they ended up winning the title. I'm not sure how good they actually were, because the 4-6 doesn't lie. I mean, they just got into the playoffs on kind of a technicality, a complication, and then Luis Perez got super hot in the playoffs. And then they were 3-7 last season. They started 0-6, and they 0-6. They did win 3 of their last 4 games. But it's the worst winning percentage in the history of the franchise, even though it's only been 3 seasons. So I don't know, that's saying a whole lot. But they had one of the most explosive passing games, led by Luis Perez. He had 2,300 passing yards, 18 passing touchdowns. Sal Cannella returns on this football team. They also had Tyler Vaughns, as I mentioned, Will Clark, Donald Payne, who spent a brief spent in the NFL, Marquette King, who was for sure in the NFL. Kalen Ballage is a running back who also was in the National Football League. Chris Odom, Jaden Price, and Lucas Haverstrick. I think this guy kicked for the Packers last season. Vic Beasley's now gone. Jalen Redmond are now gone. So they Chris Odom returns, and Donald Payne should be able to give this defense a little bit of a spark plug. So look for the Renegades to potentially be a team that's kind of in the mix for a playoff spot. They could surprise some teams with a playoff spot in playoff appearance for the Renegades, as they were pretty good down the stretch there. And Luis Perez had a good offense. Their defense last season really let them down. The Arlington Renegades. So they were the 2nd worst defense in the National Football League, giving up 315 yards per game. And then they were the 3rd worst defense in terms of points per game at 24.9. It's just not going to get a cut no matter what league if you're the 3rd worst of anything. And then in total yards, hold on. When it comes to total offense, the Arlington Renegades were the 2nd best total offense at 227 or 3,100 yards in total offense, including, as I mentioned, basically 2,300 yards in passing yards, which is best in the league by a pretty considerable margin. And then in points, they had 24.7 points. They were the 3rd highest scoring team in the UFL, led a lot by Luis Perez. And if they can kind of catch that same magic that they had down the stretch of 2023 and on the stretch of 2024, winning 3 out of 4 games, I think the Renegades are going to be okay in 2025. From there, so more prediction stuff. Let's talk about some rule changes real quick before we get into it. So after a season where they ditched the dynamic kickoff, they have decided to bring that back. It's basically very similar to the kickoff that the National Football League used last season, which I personally am a very big fan of. I just think it adds a little bit of dynamic to the football game. So, sorry, I gotta look this up. Um, Yeah, so they're going back. So kickoffs will now start at the 30 after being the 20 last night, and then they're going to do the dynamic kickoff really. So I love the dynamic kicking. It's one of my favorite rules in any league. The head coaching challenge will be expanded in 2025. So each coach will earn a second challenge if the first one is successful. I think they only had one in the last season. And the challenge can literally be anything. It can be a flag call. It can be literally anything. You name it. They can, as long as they have a timeout remaining, they can challenge any decision in any point of any game. I thought the league already removed onside kicks, but everything that I've read of the reporting, makes it seem like that is a new rule. But I could have sworn onside kicks were eliminated last season and in the first season of the XFL as well. But if you want to, like, basically, if you score a touchdown, you have the opportunity to keep the football if you can convert a 4th and 12 from your own 28. If you could do that, you can continue your drive, and it just adds for. I love this rule. I wish the National Football League would adapt this rule as well. I don't think they will, because I think it goes against the culture of the game. But something has to be done with the onside kick, because it's just not good in the National Football League. But I love this rule. I could have sworn this rule was in place last season, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't remember. If somebody does remember, if you want to put it down in the comment section, let me know, because I could have sworn this rule was already in place in the UFL, that they already didn't have onside kicks. But if anybody wants to let me know down in the comments section. And then the quick question, Stallions or the field? So the Stallions have been the champion in the last 3 spring leagues. They won the USFL in 2022 and in 2023, and then they were the champion of the UFL in its inaugural season in 2024. The Stallions or the field? I mean, I don't think you can bet against the Stallions. It feels like betting against Tom Brady at this point, or Patrick Mahomes in the National Football League now. I will take the Stallions, but I don't mind if I'm wrong and one of these other teams in this league proves me wrong that the Stallions are not the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme when it comes to the UFL, as they have been in spring football for the last 3 seasons. So yeah, I mean, I'm going with the Stallions. That leaves us with just one thing left to do on this particular episode of the podcast. We got to give you our week 1 predictions. And we got the Battle Hawks with the new quarterback situation there with Max Duggan going into Houston, taking on the Roughnecks. This is the opening. This is on Friday night. This is the opening game for the UFL this season. As I mentioned in the opener, it's a real travesty that you don't have the Stallions playing in the very first game of the very first of the season as they won the championship this most recent season. With that being said, I'm going to take the Battle Hawks. I just think that they're a little bit better of a football team than the Roughnecks. I didn't see anything on the Roughnecks last season that makes me think that they can bounce back off a rough season in 2024. But this is why we have new year. This is why we have new season. To the next one, we got, this was on Saturday night, I do believe. We got the Brahmas and the Arlington Renegades battle for Texas. I will take the Brahmas. Actually, no, I'm going to go Renegades on this particular game. I just have more faith in the quarterback play of the Renegades than I do with the Brahmas at this current time. From to Saturday afternoon football, I think one of these games is on Fox, so if you don't have cable like me, you can watch this game on free TV. Panthers versus the Showboats. I'm going to take the Michigan Panthers. And then in the nightcap, or the afternoon cap, we got the defending, reigning champion Stallions going into DC and taking on the Beer Snake and the DC Defenders. I will take the Stallions, as I have more faith. even though I know they're trying to replace Adrian Martinez there, I still have more faith in that football team as a whole than I do the DC Defenders. Even though I think Jordan Tiamo should bounce back this season. I don't know what was going on with him last year. He was just not the same guy in 2024 as he was in 2023. But yeah, that's been my UFL season preview. That's also been my week 1 preview and predictions. If you like what we're doing here at Prime Sports World, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. I am going to be running a wrestling podcast at some point this weekend, where we just give you a roundup of wrestling going on so far this week. We're going to talk a little bit about John Cena, talk a little bit about what's going on with the Usos. It's going to be a good show, so keep an eye out for that content. Like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our content. I'm, of course, your host, David On Point Huffman, and what we do here at Prime Sports World, we bring the heat. And here's a quick message from our sponsor, the Huddle Sports Network. We'll see you guys all this weekend. You all be safe, and hopefully you enjoy the first weekend of spring football. Peace out.
Welcome to the Huddle Sports Network, where we're breaking boundaries and redefining podcasting. Broadcasting live on 6 different platforms, we're bringing you the latest in sports like never before. Imagine tuning into real-time discussions, expert analyses, and fan interactions all at your fingertips. Each platform offers a unique experience, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch. We're not just sharing stories, we're creating a community of passionate sports enthusiasts. Join us as we dive deep into the evolution of podcasting, where every episode is a chance to engage, debate, and celebrate the world of sports. This is where your voice matters and the game never stops. Welcome to the Huddle Sports Network, where we're breaking boundaries and redefining podcasting. Broadcasting live on 6 different platforms, we're bringing you the latest in sports like never before, where sports passion meets podcasting brilliance. I'm Mike, the Bear fan, and alongside Bill, the Packer fan, and our buddy Ken Catalone, we're bringing you an incredible lineup of 38 diverse podcasters. Each one brings their unique flavor to the table, covering everything from game analysis to behind-the-scenes stories. Imagine diving deep into the minds of experts who live and breathe football, sharing insights that you won't find anywhere else.